That works. Nothing much. Just same old stuff on my end. Been producing a lot of music for a bunch of female singers and stuff like that, and working. I was fucking sick all last week. Like awful.
You're always sick, man.
Well, part of it's like I kind of have like a compromised immune system. I've been like it ever since I had Lyme disease as a kid, where it's like
Yeah.
if someone gets sick and it's like 3 days for them, it'll be a week for me. Um, so it's like I don't know, I get sicker easier and stay sicker longer. That's kind of why I try to be like on top of my health and everything like that, which actually that's a good segue in something. I quit my overnight job.
Is that the mental illness one?
Yeah. And part of my whole reason for quitting it though was because of all of the COVID stuff. And
COVID.
I basically told them, I said, listen, like I as a kid was very sick, like I didn't understand much
Oh
of
shit, I'm sorry. Keep going.
I was just saying, I didn't under I was, so I'll tell everyone else
Yeah,
while
man, I'll
Paul's
do that.
on his phone call.
Right, nice. See you in a bit. Yeah. I'm just gonna have to run outside in about 10 minutes and then run back in.
Oh, it's all right.
So, be like that.
But so I basically told them, I was like, listen, I had it where I was a kid and I wasn't in control of my own health and I had to just go off of what everyone said and, them, oh, this is for you, this is to keep you healthy, this is of that, this and that. And I'm like, and now I feel like I'm back in that position all of a sudden because I have all of you people telling me I need to do X, Y, and Z for my health. I don't see any legitimate reasons why I should be doing these things, even based on my own research. And I'm like, and I just basically am uncomfortable with the idea that a job has presumed this role of like my caretaker, basically. And I don't know if I had talked to you during all of this, though. They had us sanitizing and cleaning everything with bleach to the extent where I was getting bleach poisoning. Like I was
Right, yeah.
leaving work with like my eyes burning, my throat burning, like so I'm like, you guys are so like, we're doing this to keep you safe and healthy, and meanwhile everyone is getting sick from safe and healthy shit. Like what's going on here? So, and plus, there's the term Munchausen's by proxy, which is basically like where you end up with these fucked up people that will act like the caretaker of someone and want them to perpetually be sick so that they can say, look at how I'm taking care of them. Look at my poor little sick child. I'm keeping them well. And I'm like, that's the situation going on right now between employer and employee, where it's like this whole fucking wear your mask, social distancing, wipe everything down, this and that, and take your temperature every day. And it's like, I'm not acting like a fucking sick person. Like, this is insane. You're perpetuating mental illness and I'm not doing it. So I had to get out of there. Which, I mean, it's made money tight, but I mean, my stress level is just...
I didn't think they were really paying you though, were they? Or were they?
Here's the thing is, in the grand scheme of things, when it would be quiet nights and I could just kind of work on music on my laptop or rest, I was paid very well for what I was doing. In the grand scheme of things, from what they want us to be doing and the actual workload and what other agencies would pay, no, not at all. Because they're basically... at this point also just loading on responsibilities that's like caseworker work, which caseworkers get paid like 20 something an hour. So I mean, they're basically asking us to do a job that they should have been doubling our pay for. So I mean, yeah, they were taking advantage of people at that point. And I mean, and that's the other thing is, within the past year, the job was started to transform radically just based off of where they're getting their money.
I guess he just summed it up. I guess it's just a job, not a career, isn't it? It's just like a little stock.
Well, and that was the thing for me, because
for
even when I explained it to my supervisor, she was like, you know, I feel like a lot of these things, a lot of the issues you bring up could have been resolved with communication. And then I told her, I said maybe half of them could. I said, but then there's one thing that's the other half of it, which is the main thing. And she said, what's that? I said, I'm over other people's problems. I said, I just don't have it in me anymore to have people calling me every day, day in and day out. They're the source of all of their problems, but meanwhile, they want this, oh, poor you, the world's against you.
Now that's one of the worst things you can do, though.
I know. And I was like, and I can't, I mean, and I'd have conversations with other employees about it where I'm like, do you think we're helping or enabling? And most of them are just like, oh, we're enabling, without a doubt. So it's, yeah, and that's the whole thing where it's like, I just
Unless
don't.
you're honest about what it is just like a chat hotline to get stuff off your chest. It's not like.
Yeah. Listen to this though, because we were opened up again and we were taking guests and stuff like that. So it wasn't just the phone lines like it was during COVID. But then, so they're having us do all this wiping, all the social distancing, this and that. And then these weird things would happen where it's like, my significant other would send me a message, hey, the gyms are opened back up, you know, the hairdressers are opened back up. And then I'd get an email from work saying, if someone
my God, Jamie's cheating on me again.
They would say, oh, if someone comes, the only place they can go is to doctor's appointments. They can't go to the store, they can't go here, they can't go there. And I'm like, what? Like,
oh, you got nah.
I'm like,
that's dangerous for you now.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. I'm like, wait, so the only place that a person can go if they're staying here for the 5 days.
How are you supposed to enforce it, man?
Well, that's a side note, but it's like I look at it as
it's not really like. So they go, "Can I go out?" And you go, "No." You can't really say.
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing too. We can't realistically, because it's not like they're committed. It's all voluntary.
Yeah. You could say I'd rather you didn't, but it's
yeah. But I'm looking at it like, okay, so the rest of the world is loosening restrictions, and meanwhile,
you're a prison guard.
We're deciding to tighten them. Yeah, exactly. To the point where we've now said, okay, the only place a person can go is the place where sick people congregate, and this is for everyone's health and well-being. I'm like, none of this makes sense. Like, none of it. So then, I put in my 2 weeks, and I'm like, okay. And then they're like, well, one of the staff members has tested positive for COVID-19. So now everyone needs to be tested and come back negative before we can reopen. And I'm like, I only have a week left. I'm not doing this. Like, what? I said, first off, this just shows that all of your wipe shit down and everything like that is futile.
It's a waste of time.
It's a waste of time. You're just doing it to do it and to spend money on cleaning products. Like, I hope you bought stock in Lysol or something. Like, so then I'm just like, nope, not doing it, not bothering, because like, it's another one of these things where it's like someone else got sick, so now you need to act as if you are. And I'm like, not doing it. So I didn't even get my last week in because they closed the whole place down. They didn't have us even working from home then. And I'm like, this is the problem with these people where it's like,
I've got to run. I'm so sorry. I'll be 7 minutes exactly.
Okay.
All right.
I'll just keep riffing. But yeah, I mean, that was basically like another point where it's like, you can't be trying to tell me that, you know, the employees are top concern when it's like, you know, someone else gets sick, so meanwhile everyone else is just sort of fucked on hours. And then in the midst of all of this, there was also this issue with them saying we were closing down our location and going to consolidate with a location that's an hour away. So I don't drive. I obviously can't, you know, talk a friend or someone into driving me an hour to work and an hour back at midnight and 7 a.m. in the morning. So I tell my supervisor, I'm just like, listen, I can't do, you know, the location change and stuff like that. And their rebuttal to me then is, well, it might happen, it might not happen for a year from now, or this and that. And I'm like, then why did you have some fucking grand meeting to tell everyone this stuff that might not even happen? Like, again, you're working with people. Your whole intention is to hire people who have had anxiety issues, substance abuse issues, anything that falls under that mental health umbrella. You're hiring people that have, had these issues and are now in recovery. And at every turn and every step of the way, they would do whatever they could to exacerbate it. And it's like, I really struggle sometimes, because I look at it and I'm like, is the source of this dysfunction the fact that everyone working here has some sort of like mental illness? Like, is it the mental illness component that makes this, severe level of dysfunction? Now, that being said, obviously people with mental illnesses can work normal jobs and fit in with everyone else and do everything like that. But when it's in every aspect at every layer, you start to question things. I mean, there is the factor of the insurance company is setting rules, the county is setting the rules, and it's, I would just use this term like they have too many masters, where it's like when you have everyone else dictating what you can do and what you can't do, and then there's dollar signs attached to all of it, well, then obviously there's going to be chaos and everything like that. But then, a point that coworkers would make to me about the office staff is they would always say the office staff seems emotionally unstable. Like, and just little things like, there would be this sort of like social justice-y vibe. Like, my supervisor at one point came to me and was like, the peer movement, it's a movement, it's like gay rights, it's like civil rights. That never sat well with me, because I would look at the insurance agencies and the business structure sort of plopped on top of this, and I'm like, that's not how any of those other rights movements are structured, though. But then, like, we would get this new system for all of our paperwork and data entry and everything like that. And then you'd, get brought in for a training. Oh, this is how it works. This is how it operates. 2 days later, you get an email. Oh, everything we showed you was wrong. You have to do it this way. A day later from that, everything we showed you 2 days ago was wrong. I mean, it was like insane. You want to talk about botched rollout of a new system? I mean, this thing deserves an award just for how awful it was implemented. And me and a handful of other coworkers were saying from the very beginning, like, why wouldn't you just hire one person and make it their job to transfer the way we currently do the paperwork that everyone knows into the new system? And then once they've got that down, and once they have figured how to transfer everything over, you then have them go around and train everyone else. Rather than trying to train everyone all at once in a system that no one has a fucking clue about, just have one person and have that be their task, their role, their job. So I bring this up to my supervisor where I'm like, yeah, I don't even know what's going on or what I'm doing or this and that. And, credit where credit's due for honesty. She said, well, yeah, I'm still trying to figure it out too, and this and that. And then I'm just sitting back being like, okay, so if you're my supervisor and you don't even have a clue, then who as the employee am I supposed to turn to for guidance and assurance and shit like that? So,
oh, that was so
right.
sorry.
No, it's
I
all.
had that booked in for 9 o'clock.
It's all good. I just kind of riffed for a bit about the other problems at the job. So anyway, let's move on from all of that. I'm glad I'm in the clear with that. And then
I need to keep going. I ran back. I ran out the time.
No, I was just finishing up on that topic. So
Yeah, I feel bad for you because I'm not ill that often at all. I just get a 2-day build up, then a 2-day illness, and I'm good.
yeah.
Normally,
I mean, that's how I am some of the time. But I don't know. It's whatever. I mean, it's you know, the person I'm dating, like, they're at least, like, they're the same way, never sick. I mean, it's like,
If you get a photo of me and just see how skinny I am, it should be evident how strong my immune system is.
but
Lucky.
yeah, I mean, the last week it was like, I mean, the most annoying thing was my taste was off the entire week. Everything tasted bad. And then my throat hurting. Like, anytime I would swallow, it would hurt. I mean, I'm still
Oh yeah, that's the worst.
slowly getting over it. But, and you know what's the other thing about it that's really weird, and I don't know how I feel about it. I had been really good for, like, the past month with, like, taking all of my supplements. Like, whether it's my D3, my iron, you know, my InfoWars stuff, like the Prostagard and all that. And then I get fucking wildly sick when I'm, like, on top of it all. Like, and it just sort of, like, it makes me wonder, like, and I know there's, of course, you know, like, the way there's GMO fucking vegetables and organic vegetables, like, there's different levels of vitamins, and, you know, you do have to sort of pay attention to those things, but it's really discouraging when I'm like...
But I was just Googling, I mean, don't do it. I mean, I wish I never Googled it. Tap water, man, is fucking insane.
Oh, yeah.
It's absolutely fucking insane. I don't want to go there, but just take my word for it. If you're having any kind of tap water, or you come in contact with tap water, that'll probably do it.
I do know at least that they don't fluoridate in the city I'm in.
It's not the fluoridate,
but
mate.
Still...
That's the least.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
the least of your problem.
I know. There's
You are
like
just. I'll just tell you what it is.
Drug
it is basically
runoff
just
and...
piss and shit.
Yeah.
It's not getting cleaned by any stretch of the imagination.
And you know what the worst thing is I had a really high quality water filter.
To the point where, I mean, he's almost in a bear group, but the guy that wrote the book on magnetism, I can't pronounce his name because it's so weird, but he was talking about how bad water is through the tap. That basically he's not saying I'm going like too far with this, he's saying you can't even class it as water. It's kind of wrong to class it as water. It's actually dangerous because you shouldn't be washing in it. You definitely shouldn't ingest it.
Yeah.
Because water has a certain structure too, and by the time this is just waste.
Yeah. I really don't. I mean, my family thankfully keeps a lot of bottled waters in stock. I used to have a really nice water filter I bought from InfoWars, and then my niece cleaned out the basement and thought it was garbage.
Yeah, I need to get one.
Yeah.
They're quite expensive though, aren't they?
I don't know. I just bought the pitcher one. It might have been like $60. I know the refill things, and I mean they last like 3 months. They're like $30 a piece. So I mean, if you look at it, it's like $10 for water for a month. It's not that bad in the grand scheme of things.
That's good.
But it's one of those things that you can easily talk yourself into pushing off and being like, oh well, do I really need it right now?
Yeah, but you need to do the taps as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to run out to my monthly weed supply came.
But
yeah, that's what I've been doing. It's been a sad existence for me. Like, I mean, you've got to be grateful, but you can't really go out anywhere here in the UK. It's just crazy town. Everyone's panicking. Everyone's...
Yeah.
Like, I haven't worn a mask yet. I still haven't done it. I'm probably one of the only people who can say that. I've never put a mask on since it's finished.
Yeah, there were a couple weeks where now, sometimes I think I would get confused whether I was watching Australia or England, but between the two of them, I just kept seeing videos of, like, this shit going way overboard. Like, whether it's like...
In the UK, it's been comedy, to be fair. Like, it's just dumb stuff. But in Australia, it's basically a police state.
Yeah.
And they are actually disappearing people in Australia now.
Yeah.
That is happening. And the most craziest thing they've done in England, the most sinister thing, is that they've locked students in unis.
Yeah. Well, I lived...
There's no way when I was 18 to 20, they could, if me and my mates didn't have guitars and weed...
Oh my god, yeah.
We would be out within literally 15 minutes.
Well, and that's the thing. I lived like a block away from top college. It's the college Kamala Harris went to. And these kids are basically like, I would talk to them when they were on spring break, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll be back, 2-week quarantine, then we can hang out." And now they're like, they're not letting us out. And I'm like, "Oh, so you're paying thousands of dollars to be a prisoner?"
No, no. I don't get, how are they keeping you in there?
Well, they're threatening to like expel you, basically.
Ooh.
So I mean, you're sort of financially tied to this thing where it's like, you know, if
Most of it's done on student loans, though, isn't it?
I see, it's
And actually pay up front, do you?
I don't know, with these kids, a lot of them are trust fund kids. A lot of them, their parents have the money to pay. And that's the other problem, though, because this is one of those schools where you get all this crazy social justice stuff. So when you tell these kids they're privileged, in a lot of ways they really are. It's not white privilege, but they are very privileged. And I mean, there are a handful there. Like, every so often I meet a handful where they're there on student loans and their family life is a mess and stuff like that, but they're very rare in the grand scheme of the kids that go there. Yeah, I think it's like the number 8 school in the country or something.
The police would be getting us out. If they done us, we'd be doing so many games and tricks.
Oh, yeah.
That it would just be insane. Like, the place would either be on fire.
I don't even know how they could...
They're not cops holding you, so we would just say, we'd be very nice to security and say, "Hey,
well,
you can't be doing this to me. You've got 10 minutes to change your mind. If you don't change your mind, like, we're not going to harm you, but you're going to regret it, chap."
Yeah. I mean, I'm the same way, where it's like, if I was 18 and someone tried telling me you have to stay on campus, I'd be like, what the hell? Like, we would figure out...
Yeah, and I was like, Kane, like, some of my friends were nuts. A lot of them were fucking nuts.
Here's
They're in, like,
here's a funny
military
story, though. You'll get a kick out of this. So, when I was a teenager, though, growing up in this area, between the one school I'm talking about and the other school, the number one things that these two schools were known for, besides the one being like top school who, you know, Supreme Court justices and all this other shit come out of, but they were both known for having some of the highest college STD rates in the country. Like, one of them was like, you know, number 4 out of all the colleges with like chlamydia, and the other one's like number 6 out of everyone with gonorrhea. So I was talking about it to a woman one day, and I said, isn't it amazing that these colleges have been known for having like astronomical STD rates, and meanwhile that's fine, and, you know, no shutdown, no masks, or no forcing condoms onto people or chastity devices. But this other thing that barely affects teenagers and early 20s, well, that we're going to lock things down and treat them all like prisoners.
I mean, if you were Satan, you would want the STD spreading, wouldn't you?
Well, yes. And you know, it's like, it's just funny things like that happen. Like, even the other day, the same day I had that thought where I'm like, oh, all the STDs are fine, and hell, they're probably making the rates go up by just locking everyone in.
Yeah.
But I said, you know, the other funny thing is, like, I'm walking down the road, this person's walking down the street smoking a cigarette, and then as I pass them, they frantically go to put their mask on, and
Right.
I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, I'm sure fucking whatever essence of me you are afraid of breathing
but
in.
people doing that to you, Jamie, way before the COVID.
Yeah, I guess. but I mean, it's, you know what I mean? It's just silly in some ways, where it's like, the cigarette's far worse for you than anything you're gonna breathe off of me. So what are you doing? Like, you look silly. And yeah, that's just, I mean, the other thing.
I used to be on the opposite side of the spectrum completely, but it is true. If you're scared of dying, you're not really alive. You're not.
Yeah.
That takes a long time for me to say that. Like, I used to be terrified of death. Terrified. Used to lie awake. Going, what happens after this? Oh, it's so tragic. This is suffering. But now I'm like, nah. Nah, that's a plan for all of us.
Yeah.
I think if you don't live like that, I can see that people... Yeah, everyone is pretty jumpy where I am. And no one's... can't believe people believe it.
Well, and
it's really sad. My life's become really sad. I can't go to any pubs without a track and trace.
See, and that's
you have to wear a mask.
That's the one thing in Europe that I keep hearing about that we don't see as much in the States yet, but I think they'll just sort of backdoor it in the States, is all the stuff about phone tracking apps and stuff. Like, I see Computing Forever does a lot of good coverage on the stuff in Ireland, as far as, you know, digital
Ireland's about to go on
passports.
lockdown again, apparently.
Yeah.
And they're doing it in certain areas. So
I
they
saw
just do
last night
lockdown.
New York City again, too. They're talking about locking down very select areas of New York City.
Yeah, I guarantee you it ain't the rich areas. You know, I mean rich areas, you know. I bet they're not locked down ever. Because that's what we're getting in England. It's just a poor, rough place.
You know
want to
what?
lock
You know what
down.
I do want to say though, just get it out, even though we're almost a half hour in, but sort of early on. I don't know if you're aware of the channel Value
We
Team.
could just go again. We could start again and just hit the news.
No, maybe, but I just want to say I watched on Valuetainment a interview with this girl who's a North Korean defector. No matter how bad things are with COVID, if you listen to this girl, you will gain a new appreciation for how good you have it. I mean, this guy asked this girl, when you're growing up in like North Korea and you're conditioned there and everything, what is your like dream in life? What is the thing, you know, that's just you know, your big dream in life? This girl said, my dream was to have a bucket of bread because I just wanted to see how much I could eat to feel full. And I was just sort of like, whoa. Like, that's how horrible things are over there, that you don't even know what it's like to eat until you're full. Something Americans and most Western nation people can do 3 times a day without even thinking about it. And meanwhile, she is like, I didn't even know what feeling full was like. I mean, the things this girl was talking about were out of this world. I mean, it's almost satirical how over the top it is. So I'd recommend
We're going to be
everyone
in
check
that
that interview
situation
out.
soon because the whole point of the track and trace is we're going to get to the point where there's most companies, what they want to do is the whole point obviously is to wipe out the middle class. And it's sad, I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but it's sad to see people fall for it. Where in England, all the pubs are now putting all their money in to get, you know, to put in for the new COVID restrictions. And then they keep having to change this, change that, change this. They're putting all their last pennies in just for it to be inevitably wiped out.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I mean,
and all you're going to have, as you know, these big mega chains. You can have your Lidls, your Amazon, and that's going to be it. And if you don't follow those private rules, there isn't anywhere else to go.
I'll tell you, the thing that drives me the craziest, especially when I was watching the presidential debate, is seeing Joe Biden.
That Biden's got complete black eyes.
Well,
and is a reptilian.
Well, not that, but him trying to make this case that Donald Trump didn't shut down the economy fast enough, and that's why COVID is so bad. So now the only way to save the economy is to shut it back down. And I'm like, just why? I mean, I know he's full of shit and just saying all this stuff, but it's like I'm like wondering just how's the average person process this level of just it's just cognitive dissonance on a platter, basically, where it's like, oh yeah, in order to save the economy, we have to stop the economy. Like, the only way to save it is to kill it. Like, but
but to be fair, I mean, I know you don't want to hear it. I mean, Trump didn't exactly perform well in a debate. He didn't do badly, but it wasn't.
Yeah,
it wasn't a good debate. It was two tribes go to war.
But I also remember, I remember last time it was sort of like that, where the first one, it was sort of like lukewarm. He didn't, come out the box swinging. They sort of built up to the third one being the one where he was just nailing them on the stuff. There was a lot of stuff in that debate, though, I really do wish he handled differently.
I didn't watch it. I just watched the clips. And I was like,
even when they asked him about the racial sensitivity training, I really wish he was like, it's not racial sensitivity training, it's critical race theory, and this is, there were some things where it's like, I the thing he's very good at his rebuttals, but the thing he isn't good at is to reframe what they're stating, because that's really how they pull the wool over everyone's eyes, is just by the framing of it all. See, because to them, like I'm saying, it's not critical race theory, it's racial sensitivity training. Or, you know, I mean, now this whole idea that the fucking all the cities burning is white supremacists burning it because of who knows, like, I mean, but the funniest part during all of it is, of course, I'm watching Gavin McInnes's live stream when they're like Proud Boys, and he just sat there like, what? He's like, is people's opinions on Gavin is now a part of the presidential debate? Like, what is happening? But yeah, the whole thing, it was really lackluster. I mean, I don't think there was nothing really came out of it. Except, see, I will tell you though, except he probably got some good clips on Biden just flat out denying everything about Hunter and all that other stuff, you know, in terms of if you needed to make campaign rally commercials and stuff like that, they probably got what they needed from Biden. Like, now, here's one thing that I did think was really telling that I wish more people focused on, and I think it's why they had to run with this whole white supremacy thing so people didn't pay attention to this. When Biden was asked about packing the Supreme Court, his response was basically, well, whatever I choose to do, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but right now you just need to vote, and you need to vote for me, and this and that. And I mean, like I said in a video I did earlier last week, I think, you know, before the Democrats would either just lie and say the opposite of what they were going to do, or they would sort of give like fluff talk. Biden now at this point is just like, I'm not even going to tell you what I'm going to do, but fuck Trump, that's why you should vote for me. And it was just, I mean, there's a sort of brazenness to it of him just being like, I'm not going to answer your questions. Like, I mean, it was just really, and I mean, the more obnoxious thing is the moderator didn't even press him on any of it. Anytime Trump was picking up steam, the moderator would just switch topics.
What about Trump having COVID?
I don't know what to make of it.
It's not good, is it? To be honest.
I wonder if he does. I mean,
Well, it's pretty good timing, isn't it? I mean, it's 33 days from the election. I don't want to be like Illuminati hiding in plain sight, but 33 days away from the election, this comes up.
I mean, there's so many angles you can look at it from. Like, here's a very basic one. We know the tests are, what, 70% inaccurate? And so, I mean, if he's tested every day, you're bound to get a false positive, just statistically. Now,
But he is actually saying he's ill, though.
Yeah. And I mean, so then, you know, there's obviously other, like, I see one of the things I heard Alex Jones saying the other night, which I agree with, is I worry more about him being in medical care than I worry about
You're getting
him
to where I'm going, yeah. He
having
sounds
it.
like he's at risk from the treatment more than the actual disease.
So yeah, I mean, that is my main concern, is because it's almost like, you know, you don't have anyone overseeing your health, and now because you're in this position, you do. And how much can you trust them and all this other stuff? You know, because the whole thing about him being given these 2 experimental drugs and all this other stuff, like, that makes me very nervous. But
Also sounds very scripted too.
yeah. Well, and I don't know if you saw the video I did, but now the odd thing that I looked at with it is, because again, after the debate, I was flipping through all my usual like podcast channels. Ben Shapiro was saying, you know, after the Access Hollywood tape, Trump stepped back from the spotlight for 2 weeks, and his poll numbers went up because they were just focusing on Hillary. And I sort of looked at it, because now I'm even seeing where his polling is going up. So in some ways, it's like during this time, the less Trump, the better for him.
Yeah, I get that.
So in that way, it does benefit him. So I didn't know if maybe this was like a power play on his
Well,
end,
it'd be the
but
most dirtiest. It'd be quite a dirty power play.
yeah. Um, but again, you don't even like. Here's the way I look at it, though. Is like he doesn't even have to really be involved with it. Like, let's just say Kushner had a conversation with some doctor and was like, "Oh, well, yeah, let's make one of these tests go positive so we can sort of set him aside for a bit and this and that." Um, who knows? I mean, you're dealing with shady sort of forces that know no limits. And that's the thing where it's like everyone in some way or another really is just a player on someone else's chessboard, and there's very few people that don't have any players above them. Um, like even like a Soros character, like I still feel like there's probably a small handful of people above him that could, pull him aside and give him a talking to that would make him change his MO. You know what I guess what I'm sort of alluding to is like, the idea that when presidents get elected, they get brought into a room and they see the footage of what really happened to Kennedy as like a warning. And I'm just basically sort of saying like, most of these people, no matter how high up you get, still have someone that could pull them aside and give them that sort of talking to. So I don't know. Like I think again, people very easily forget that Trump isn't the top of the pyramid.
And then we get deeper and deeper into the COVID narrative. The novel virus, the made-up story. It's just
Yeah.
I don't feel easy with it at all. Yeah, I think like you're not going to want to hear this at all, but I think the best move Trump could do. You're not going to like this at all. I'm not 100% sold on this, but if I was Trump, what I would do. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Resign. And the reason I would resign is because he's got to do it carefully. He's got to put someone in who's going to do it, maybe not Pence. And you've got to say the reason I've done this isn't because I don't think I can do the job. It's because the mail-in ballots come so out of hand now. It's got my name on it, and I can't have my name on that ballot. I can't do it. So I'm going to resign, and all those ballots are now worthless.
I don't
So
know.
I'm not stepping down because I don't think I can do this. I'm stepping down because the ballot thing's so ridiculous. It's going to tear the country apart, and it's obviously a fraudulent setup. I can't. It's going to end in a civil war
Yeah.
because I can't win when you guys are fucking with the mail-in system and mucking about the ballots, and we don't even know how we're voting. So as long as those ballots have gone out and it's got my name on it, I'm going to resign, and yes, you redo the whole thing. You come up with a better idea on how people are going to vote.
I mean, I'll tell you, the fact that this ballot system has even been
Do you see what I mean?
allowed.
Because then the ballots
I
are
do.
completely worthless now.
Here's the thing is that I'm not sure on the details of that whole system because it's not done federally. It's done through the states somehow. So I don't know how much him doing that would actually even change things because again, this whole ballot thing has been implemented by the states. It's almost like this weird merit system where the federal government says, okay, it's a federal election, but we trust you states can handle, running it on your own. And then that's where it gets into the delegates and the electoral college and all this other stuff. But I mean, I do see your point because this whole mail-in thing,
And when I say resign, I'm not saying completely give up. He's going to have to take a back seat. It's more what I mean. He can still be in the White House, but
because it's like you have this narrative, and they really started it last time, and they ran it with Bush too, where this idea that the popular vote is supposed to mean something. And again,
Well, this is the other thing. I think Trump could do that. I don't think he is the popular vote. I mean, he was, but he's not really offering anything this time round. If he could get the right person in, it might just calm things down a little.
See, but here's
Get someone a bit more likable in there.
but here's the other issue with that, is because
He hasn't got much of a campaign, has he? Let's face it.
no, I think he does, but here's the reason why I doubt if that would even have any effect on anything.
What's he going to do? Make America great again? I can't handle that slogan.
Well, but no, I see the point. The part of what the factor in all of this that I'm sort of focused in on, that I think this whole scenario you've laid forth. Let me put it to you like this: if Black Lives Matter was an organic movement, what you're saying would make sense. But the fact that it's not is it almost makes it irrelevant. I mean, look at it like this: in any of these cop shooting situations, the details of the case don't matter. The legalities don't matter. None of reality fucking doesn't matter at this. I mean, Soros has enough money that, you know, if real protesters don't want to go out, he'll pay people to go out. So in that aspect, it's when we're talking about trying to calm things down, my question is, how much of the fervor is real and how much of it is artificial?
Doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't matter. I agree with you on this 100%. But it doesn't matter because the election's never going to get called, is it? That's my point. It's not going to get into that. It's not even relevant because it's just going to be a continuous argument over who won.
But
and who
the past
didn't
4
win.
years
And
has
when-
already been
and
that.
should it have
But
been in and out?
here's the thing then, though. This is because here's the other.
Yeah, and it's kind of Trump's fault. He lost control. I mean,
No, but but the point you're missing is, like, let me put it to you like this. They've already been saying this all about the last election. So what makes it seem like it's going to be anything more than just the nuisance of the past 4 years with them saying, well, he lost the popular vote because of Russian collusion and all of this? I mean, they don't think his first time around was valid or legitimate or, you know, anything like that. So, I mean, in some ways, I think it could just be no different than the way things currently are. I mean, they obviously, you know, there's the whole not my president thing. Like, these people don't respect him in office in the first place. So I don't know if it really is going to be all that much different or not. That's where I sort of question this whole, you know, is it legitimate? Is it not? I mean, I know at the election they were trying to play it up. Oh, well, if, you know, you announce and this and that and your people go out and all this other stuff, like, I mean, there's obviously going to be a fight over it, but here's the other thing though, is I think the average normal person knows there isn't much enthusiasm for Biden. So how enthusiastically...
no, there's none. No, that's yeah. They don't need any enthusiasm for Biden. It's obvious they don't even want it. It's not relevant because they're not ever gonna.
So it's like, if no one has enthusiasm for Biden, like, I really wonder how much you could gin people up thinking that he was supposed to have won. Like, it was stolen from him. Like, I mean, I mean, thus far still, remember, I live in upstate New York. This is supposed to be, you know, liberal everywhere. And I see these signs like hate has no home here and science is real and all this other shit in people's yards. But this is the only time around where I can probably count the Biden signs I've seen on one hand. Like, it's probably like 5 or 6 at this point. And I've seen not as many Trump signs. I've seen maybe 3 of them so far, but I see a lot of "we support the police" signs, which I feel like is kind of a dog whistle to "we support Trump" at this rate. So I mean, even in very liberal areas, I think there's a lack of concern, and just, you know, people are like, fuck this. Like, I'm more concerned about catching COVID than who gets elected. Like, you know, here's my other big issue with the debate in general. And as I was watching it, I kept making these points where I'd be like, Oh, see, now the
Well,
government.
hang on. I just had a thought, quite a nasty thought. Maybe this explains the situation Trump is in, because if you're a Republican, perhaps he is better, I'm sorry to say it, maybe he is better off, out the picture. If you are just a straight Republican in the office, you know what's coming down the road. You're like, it would be helpful just to get Trump out the picture. Because I'm just reading, this is just bullshit Sky News. This has just come in. So it's a timeline of his treatment. On day one, it looks like, he was given something called a Regeneron's antiviral antibody cocktail, a Regen Cove 2, an experimental treatment, along with aspirin, which I'm not worried about, melatonin, vitamin D, zinc, and some other nonsense. But I've got no idea what this REGN Cove 2, lab-generated antibody, is such a good idea.
I don't know. I mean, see,
You do, Jamie. You
well,
don't know.
well, no. See,
This is a terrible idea.
I'm not. See, but I'm not even thinking about that stuff. I do. I think it's a terrible idea. I think just the problem, and it sort of goes to what I was saying about framing
Trump
of
has left the
things.
building, is what I'm saying. I don't think it's going to be
Here's
an option for him.
my issue
It's
is
out. That's where the script's going, man.
but here's the problem, because I'm thinking of what you were just saying about, regular Republican think this and that. I think it's foolish to think that Trump is the center of the story, basically, of what's going on in America, because he's not. And it's almost very similar to what he was saying at the debate, where he was saying it's not a right-wing problem. We don't have right-wing people out in the streets burning things. Black Lives Matter didn't start under Trump. So again, it's not to say it's that he's irrelevant, but I mean, if he was not in the picture, I just don't see what would change. I would just think you'd sort of have this leftist uprising and overthrow.
Well, you could just stick a mop up for president, and it
Yeah.
would beat Biden.
Well, but
Just put anything in.
but I
And then
think
you've solved the ballot problem, and you've solved the problem of not being able to get anything done. Because whilst Trump's president, you're just not going to get anything done because it's just going to be
no,
clown
you know
world.
what's really funny about that, actually? I saw this really good clip on the Jimmy
So
Dore
let's just get
show.
rid of Trump,
Hold on, let me make this point.
fix the ballots,
But
and then
but the point I'm
all the
making
nonsense is over.
the point I'm making is getting rid of Trump is irrelevant. The actual real nonsense will just then go completely unchecked. I mean, Trump, I think, is just a speed bump for it. Like, I don't even think Trump is a stop for it. You saw that when he tried to ban the critical race theory from the federal agencies, and they turned around and said, "Fuck you, we'll do what we want." So like, Trump is a speed bump. He's not a stop for these things. And I think if you removed him, then you're just removing the speed bump. But now here's an interesting thing. There was this podcast, Jimmy Dore, who I've been watching a lot of, mainly because he's a Bernie supporter,
Is he
progressive.
the guy that spat on Alex Jones?
Yes,
That dude.
yes.
Yeah.
So his show, one of the things I love is he lampoons the corporate left, which are his side of the aisle, and he does it better than any right-winger could do. So he's showing this podcast of Nancy Pelosi, and Nancy Pelosi gets on this girl's podcast, and this girl is like, "Nancy Pelosi, you're number 3 in the ranks. If Pence and Trump weren't there, you'd run the country. You have so much power. Is it ever hard to handle all this power and being a woman and this and that?" And Nancy Pelosi is like, "Oh, the power, it's so much awesome power, this and that." So then the girl's follow-up is, "So with all this awesome power you have, what are you doing?" And she goes, "Well, Trump and the Republicans, and they don't care about this group and that group and the next group and all this other stuff." And the girl says, "Okay, yeah, but what are you doing? Like you said, when they wanted to change the Affordable Care Act, if they put up a wall, you'll pole vault over it and this and that. Where is your pole? What are you doing? So Nancy Pelosi then goes, oh, well, you know, we wanted to get checks out to the American people, and Trump just cared about his name on it, and this and that, and we had to stop him. And the girl then goes, again, this is a leftist arguing with Nancy Pelosi, and says, Nancy, what difference does it make if his name is on the check? These people need money. Like, you shut down their businesses and all of that, and you're sitting here saying that we should deny them any money from the government because Trump will have his name on it and will be able to take some credit? Like, what? So then Nancy Pelosi is going on again and all this other, and so the woman again presses her, Nancy Pelosi, what are you doing in office and all this other stuff? How are you going to, you know, get things done for the Democrats? Because one of the other big points of contention was, in the stimulus package, the Democrat states wanted money, you know, for state and local stuff. Now, a lot of it is these places have been run into the ground, and I don't think they deserve money to fix problems that were there pre-COVID. Again, we're talking California, New York, and everywhere else. Nancy Pelosi's rebuttal, though, was, well, we're just going to keep making our case. And that's all it was. Nancy Pelosi just flat out admitted, all we're going to do is to continue to engage in this political theater. So Jimmy Dore's commentary is like, this is why we got Trump. Because these corporate Democrats, Nancy Pelosi is making more money fundraising with Trump in office, doing her huff and puff and Orange Man bad and all this other stuff, than if she was actually getting things done. If she actually leveraged her position, if she actually stopped Republicans from doing things and all this other stuff. But meanwhile, all she's doing, like, she'll hurt the American people if it makes Trump look bad in the process. Like, it's all this sort of theater game that she's engaged in, and there's no concern for the average American. And I mean, it was just a very, you know, you never see Nancy Pelosi pressed like that on a mainstream media interview. But it was just really interesting. Especially when she finally just was like, well, we're just going to keep making our case. And it's like, what? Like, that's all you're going to do is just yell Orange Man bad? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest real honest beef is because I don't believe a word of COVID, to have Trump come down with it, it's pretty, like, great. Okay. It's not what I need.
I mean, see, the problem is with it, like, I have a lot of questions and I have a lot of doubts. Like, you know, part of me feels like it's not real. Like, I go from one extreme to the other of it's not real and it's all just this statistical game they're playing. And then part of me is like, oh, well, you do have fucking top Chinese virologists fleeing for their lives saying it's a bioweapon. So I think it's probably a mix of both, and probably a test run for far more serious things. But a lot of it, I think, again, goes to the and there was another point I was going to tie into this, actually, that was mentioned at the debate. But remember when we did the podcast about Epstein, and I basically put forth the idea of, like, how real is reality? Like, does it even have to be for everyone to respond in these ways, and the COVID thing? And it's like, you know, no one could have died, and they could have just fear-mongered us all into, like, the masks and social distance. I mean, they practically did. So I don't know. I'm very skeptical of everything, including the Trump getting
Yeah, I've not
COVID
seen anyone just collapse and die on the street.
Yeah.
I've not heard of one healthy person that died. He was just healthy and then suddenly died.
Yeah.
I've just not heard of it.
And I know of people that are like 102 that have died, and then the doctors mark down COVID and the family fights them to have it taken off because it's not what killed them. So I only know of the opposite as far as my firsthand experiences. But now one of the things that, again, and it's done in a very minor and insidious way, the way it cripples the economy, because you look at the situations like the flat out shut down an area, no one goes to work, essential only. But even I'm talking to Brett the other day, Brett gets like some 24-hour bug, and they then tell him he has to go and get tested and take a week off and all this other stuff. And it's like, that's one of the other ways it will kill the economy, is by just having cold and flu season, and people are afraid to fucking cough at work because next thing you know, you're going to tell them to leave and that they, can't come in until they're tested and all this other nonsense. And then you have the false positive aspect of it where it's like, whether they're shutting down businesses in whole or just sort of one by one picking off the work staff, like, I mean, I can't tell you how happy I was that I was able to
We know they're going to do this because we've all read The Great Reset.
Yeah.
The economy is going to get smashed, and it's because there's no jobs. The only way you're going to get your food will be through social credit systems.
Yeah. Which
You've got to be a good boy, then you get your stuff.
Well, and I've even heard that Trump is sort of trying to implement some sort of weird universal basic income thing through like the Federal Reserve and everything like that. And it's funny, even I saw Mike Cernovich talking about where he was like, all these conservatives talking about, Trump shouldn't just be handing out money and shouldn't be doing universal basic income. He said, we've bailed out everyone but the American people. He said, it's about time that it just comes around to us. He said, sorry I'm taking that approach, but he's like, I want my Trump bucks. He said, I've already paid in to fucking save the auto industry and the housing collapse and the banking collapse and all of that. He said, the American people are about to collapse. It's about time they get their round of money.
Why are you going to spend it?
Huh?
Where are you going to spend it?
Who know? It's an interesting story. You'll like hearing this because being a musician, even when I had a friend who got unemployment with the extended benefits and everything like that, so he went and bought what was it, like Native Instruments Complete or Control Complete or something, and it's basically all their software and the MIDI controller that's like made to sync with it the best and all this other stuff, like $200 or $2,000 setup, or maybe like $1,500, somewhere in that.
So he could have got the
ballpark.
software for free.
Well, he already has all of it for free, but for whatever reason, I don't know. People see, here's the thing: is he's doing a lot of licensing stuff, and sometimes these companies do find ways where I've seen they've even gone on people's tutorials and been like, you're using cracked software, we'll come after you, whatever. But it only is when you get to a
it's
certain
only if
amount.
you're actually making money off it. You
Yeah.
have to have that.
So anyway, either way, so he went to buy this stuff. Guitar Center or whoever tells him for months it's on back order, and every time he talks to them, it's another month on back order.
Guitar Center's fucked. Yeah, I know.
And all this other stuff, and then finally he thinks they just refunded it, and then didn't even tell him they did the refund and canceled the order. But I mean, it basically was like, it's one of those things where you look at it and you're just like, is this how bad the supply chain is broken down? Like that, you're talking like 6-month back orders.
Well, the thing Guitar Center are doing now, they put something up where they're going to offer you a lot less for part exchange, and they kind of rely on part exchange. And don't quote me, but I think Fender dropped them because they can't pay they're not on credit anymore with Fender. So there's going to be no more Fender guitars coming in. I imagine Gibson's the same.
Yeah.
And you think it's not a big deal, but that place probably does about 30% of all the guitar trade in America. And I heard from people that have been there that the shelves are just empty.
Yeah.
There's
I
a lot
mean,
of
that's
people
what it seems like.
So yeah, they're going to need some kind of bailout, which they might be able to get. Yeah, because I don't want to name names, but I was talking to the guy that owns Peach Guitars, which is quite big in America. Talking to him the other day, and he was telling me how bad Guitar Center's looking. But he doesn't think they're going to go though, because they can probably pull a deal. But,
It's
I think Fender's
interesting.
dropped some.
I was watching I forget the name of a podcast. I think it's a comedian though who's been on Rogan a few times. And they were talking to Sagar from The Hill, where they basically explained taxes and depreciation and basically how Amazon pays no taxes. Because they were talking about the Trump tax story, and they were like, is there something here? And he's like, no, this is actually business as usual, which should be the story, because what
Because I'm confused, because Are they just talking about income tax? Is that like paying yourself a salary?
No.
It's not.
What
Okay.
they were talking about is what
'Cause
so
I was about to say, I can't imagine Trump pays himself a salary, so there wouldn't be any income tax. He wouldn't pay it.
what these companies like Amazon do, because Amazon's main business is not the retail business, it's web services. So they will take their web services business or whatever. Okay, let me first explain this the way they did. Say you buy a business, or you buy a building for $100 million. Well, then the next year you have someone come in and appraise it and say, okay, well, it's lost money, it's only 90 million. So you get to write off that 10 million every year you own the bit. Like every, the amount it's depreciating, you get that as a write-off. So you're still owning this $100 million business that you paid for, but someone said now it's only worth 90, so you get to write off the difference. Well, let's say now you then invest 10 million into it. So you take it from the 90 million back up to 100 million, but you get to write off the depreciated amount and the amount you invested into it. So now that's a $20 million write-off. So
Okay. I know I don't get my tax, but aren't you missing stage one, the biggest scam of it all?
which is
I'm not a tax expert, but I think the way you have to play it, the reason guitarists, you see these guitarists with really nice guitars, is because if they don't buy really nice guitars, they're paying tax. So it's going to be the same with the building. You want to put your money into a building because if not, if you've got 100 million income from your business, you're going to be paying 50% tax on that. That's probably more. You're probably going to be paying like 60 million just in tax. So if you put it into the building, you can't tax any of it because you pull it back into the business. I don't think it's taxable, any of it.
well, yeah,
You missed the whole tax to begin with because all your money's going into real estate.
that
I could be wrong on that, but I think you only get taxed on basically stuff that's left over.
Well, what I think it is you're
But you get my point. That's why you see
well,
Slash with a 20 grand guitar, 30
well,
grand guitar. It's not because he's rich. It's because he doesn't want to pay tax.
there is a point
cash.
to it that you did say where you're not paying the whole amount. So okay, so let me rephrase this. You buy $100 million building, right?
Yeah, right.
And then let's say the taxes on it are 60 million or whatever.
No, there won't be any tax on it. That's the whole point.
Well, no, there is. There is.
You sure?
But yeah. But it does tie into what you were saying. So let's say
No, because the building will become an expense. You don't pay tax on your expenses.
but you have to make it an expense. So you get the building.
I think, don't quote me, I think when you run a business, you only get taxed on the money, has to be a certain amount of money. Let's say it's 10 grand. I don't think it's much. Has to be 10 grand. That's basically just in the account as cash, float as float. So if you had a music business and you got your first contract, let's say you made 20 grand with your first album, if you kept all that money, you'd pay tax on it. But to avoid the tax, best thing you could do would basically buy new studio equipment.
Well, okay, you're getting into my Amazon point. Let me finish on the real estate one real quick.
All right.
With the real estate thing, it's like if you buy a building, the building's $100 million. Say you have to pay 60 million in the taxes for that.
No, you wouldn't pay any tax, would you?
Paul,
That's the whole point.
No, because because if that was the case, there'd be no reason for the two things I'm about to explain.
All right.
So
I could be wrong on it. All right.
So okay, so we're saying it's 100 million, you have to pay 60 million on it. Well, then you get someone to appraise it, and they come and they appraise your building and say,
yeah. We've been doing that for decades.
Say, okay, your building is only worth 80 million. So now you're saying, okay, well, I paid an extra 20 million.
Yeah.
So now that 60 comes down to 40. So then you go and say, okay, well, I don't want to pay anything on this in the first place, so I'm going to take 40 million and invest it into the building, into renovations, paint, whatever the hell. And now you're paying nothing between the investment into the property and the depreciation. You're now
No, you do better than that. No, because then you're missing stage two now. Because now you've done that part of the scam, it gets better. because basically what you're saying is you devalue the property, right? Let's say you devalue it by 10 million, right? That 10 million, you know that float I was telling you about?
Mm-hmm.
You only pay the tax on the float, you know, the kitty. That 10 million loss, I think, would come off the next year's kitty. So instead of having to earn 10 grand just to pay tax, you're going to have to clear your 10 million first. So it means you don't pay tax in the future.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Some of these deductions are going for multiple years and stuff.
Yes, I think it becomes a deduction, and deduction's going to come off your float. So then when you pay your tax, you pay, they go, oh, why haven't you paid any tax, Jamie? You've earned like 5 million this year. You've got to pay it past 10 grand. You go, oh, well, I lost 10 million last year.
Yeah, well, and that's basically what Amazon does, where they, like, you know, they have their web services department, and then they have their retail division, which is basically, you know, them making everyone's products and undercutting them. And they basically use the write-off amount losses from the one area to finance the other. So there's no money being pulled out basically to be taxed, because it's all just reinvested from the one area into the other. And like, they're basically laundering the money within themselves to never have to pay taxes.
Yep.
And it's like, and that's the thing Sagar was basically on trying to explain, where he said this isn't like a Trump only issue. This is an issue with the tax code and the way this thing has been set up so that people can play these games, basically. He's like, it's not
But it's also really bad if you just want a very simple small business. It just becomes impossible.
Yeah.
There's stuff like just being a hairdresser where you don't need equipment all the time, because you're just going to get taxed.
Yeah.
And yes, your business can grow and expand and expand and expand. You're going to have to pay tax.
Well, that's why McDonald's was always sort of genius when people realized they're not in the hamburger business, they're in the real estate business. Their actual business and where they're making the money is on the locations and the properties.
Yeah, they franchise the building. Yeah.
Yeah. So they can take losses all day long on the actual restaurant part, and they'll just write it off against the other. But yeah, again, I'm not an expert in this area either. I vaguely know what's going on, like, as far as...
The only reason I know that is because there's a couple of guitarists that are doing well in my area, and they're all buying 10 grand, 12 grand guitars. And that's why. It's because, it's not because they're being flash, it's because if they don't spend that 10 grand, they're going to pay tax on it.
Yeah.
And if they get the right guitar, then it's just like buying gold or silver, I guess. You know, when the business finally you're finished with it, you just
see. Now, one of the things I didn't realize that they did mention in this. Well, and here's the other thing, even with the guitar, is if they buy a 10 grand guitar, you know, 1 year, they can write it off that it's 10 grand, and then say the you know, value of the guitar goes down the next year and they're still using it, all that, they can then write off the depreciation value and all that ongoing. So it's very much like you said, where they are looking at it like an investment, like how other people would. You can do that with your equipment and all sorts of stuff if those are your areas of business, like the depreciation value on the gear.
Yes, I think he gets a lot of stick again. You brought a 10 grand guitar, and it's like, well, yeah, I got it for 7 grand, and I had to spend, like, I wasn't planning to spend 7 grand, but, you know, it's tax, isn't it?
Well, and it's also just, I think a lot of those arguments come from basically people financially educated or not.
And it's not like a stupid guitar. It's like you probably know what it is. It's one of those Murphy Les Pauls, Murphy Age, Tom Murphy Age. So that's never going to not do well. It's it's not a risky kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really worried for the next 30 days. I think it's going to be insane for you. The election. I mean, I don't watch any news, as you can probably tell anymore. I just can't even.
Well, there's nothing real being talked about on any of it. You know, I mean, we had the fucking Proud Boys dominate the news cycle for a week, and it's like, if you know what they really are, I mean, that's like peak clown world.
I thought they got pretty good coverage. I saw that. I thought they did pretty well out of it.
Well, it's weird because they really didn't do a great job of making them seem as
No,
scary.
they look pretty fun, yeah.
Even the New York Times did a thing where they went to these cities and did like actual investigative, things as to who's starting the problems and the riots. And when they came back, they were like, "Oh, actually, it's the left wing. Like, we only found communists that wanted to burn everything down." Like, and I did see, now here's another interesting story, is Biden, when he was talking about white supremacists and all this stuff, they ran an ad basically inferring that Kyle Rittenhouse, the kid that ended up shooting someone in the arm at Kenosha, that he was a white supremacist, and he already has a legal team coming to his aid to sue for defamation. So that's one of the things that, and I think that's probably why they had to tread lightly with the Proud Boys coverage, is because Gavin has all those lawsuits going. So they probably realized, listen, if we handle this the wrong way, he's already suing the SPLC, they'll just add us on to it as well.
Yeah, they're not going to mess with Gavin just because of his history.
Yeah.
You'd just be nuts to go for Gavin because he built up a vice. It's not as if he doesn't like have an audience or know how to get one.
Well, and he's showing he'll obviously take the legal steps to make it so you can't just say whatever you want about him. But I mean, yeah, it's definitely when they're talking about, our nation's problems result from a drinking club that punches each other while naming sugary cereals. It's like, okay, like, obviously, like, that's not the problem in the streets right now. Like, this is absurd.
The problem you've got is lockdown 2 and the Trump COVID drama.
Which even that, I'm really questioning if it might be done and over with by the end of the week.
Well, I think he'll be dead because he took this fucking weird stuff.
Maybe, or he might just end up fucking coming out of it
Because it
fine.
was in The Simpsons. It's the next part. The Simpsons had him in a casket.
I don't know. I do wonder if that were to happen, if he were to die right before the election, would they just then have sort of Pence step in as president on the Republican ticket, or what they would do?
Would it be a good way to close the curtains on this one?
I don't know.
Move ahead with the COVID. Get Trump out of the way. Move ahead with the COVID. Get the lockdowns done. And show them that this experiment treatment's stupid. You just have to take the vaccine and trust CNN's news and the fact checkers, not like Trump. Because Trump got it wrong. He didn't take the COVID seriously enough, and now he's dead. And he seems to be erratic. Like, if you go on Trump's Twitter now, it's insane. It looks like he's gone crazy, doesn't it?
I don't know. I haven't seen it.
You go on it now. Have you not been on it?
No.
Yeah, he's gone nuts. Have you not seen?
No.
It looks like he's high on drugs, and it's just everything's in block capitals. You've got the first one just says, "Fight the corrupt fake news, media, vote." All in block capitals. These are all block capitals. And then these are like every 15 minutes or so. Protect pre-existing conditions, vote. Better and cheaper healthcare, vote. Best VA ever, 91% approval rating, vote. 401k, vote. Biggest tax, these are like every 5 minutes. Religious liberty, vote.
I mean, I think
this doesn't look like a normal Twitter account anymore.
No, you know what I think it is? I think there's a much simpler
Space Force.
I think there's a far simpler explanation for this. I think he's having a campaign rally in his head while he's sitting in the hospital bed, and it's just raging out through Twitter. That's
He's on his Twitter page.
Yeah,
no.
I'm looking at it. That's what I really think is going. I think in his head he's at the rally, and he's just stuck in this hospital bed, like raging out, like, I want to be on the stage, like, law and order, vote, religious. Oh man, yeah.
These could be Trump's last words, documented in history.
Oh man, it's. Oh God, yeah, he's stuck in a hospital bed having a fit. Uh,
The thing is, even though he's tripping out, he's still got really good grammar. Everything's spelt right.
oh
No
man,
naughty words. Oh
pro-life,
my god.
vote, better and cheaper healthcare, vote.
I mean, this is the side effects of an experimental drug.
Oh man, yeah, it is. Poor Trump. I
Yeah,
mean,
I hate to say it, I think it's over for him.
I don't know. See, here's the thing I want, and this is me going way off the deep end. I sort of wonder, with any of these.
33 days before the election, and isn't there's a crown card in the tarot deck, and that's the 30. Was that the 33rd card as well? And that's known as the Trump card.
I don't
This
know.
is a bit
I just
weird.
I just wonder though if
Yeah,
there's
put some
some
weight
sort
into
of
that.
like see now when I get into the fucking deep dark rabbit hole way of thinking, my thought is that this is
Trump's just basically done a Biden.
no, see what I think, well, yes and no. Now, I think what could be going on, and this is again me going very out there into the depths of conspiracy realms, is they gave him these injections. We know there's this crazy nano whatever, reprogram your DNA and everything like that. So what if they said, okay, there's no way we can pull off this Biden win. So the best thing we can do is fucking hit Trump with some shit that basically then we can take control of him on a cellular level, essentially, after the fact. Where next thing you know, not even something that's going to happen in this window of time, but maybe like this time next year, he then falls like a slow kill thing. Like how they say, the vaccines have cancer viruses.
Yeah, oh, he's just gone mental.
So
He doesn't know what he's saying anymore.
yeah, and again, I think you're more likely to have something like that happen because but then again, they just killed Jeffrey Epstein and are like nothing to see here. But I don't know if they could do the same with the president. So I think I would be more concerned with the long-term effects of these treatments and possible technological, who knows, maybe they put him under and put in a Neuralink or something,
Yeah, that I'm worried about. Yeah, anything. Yeah.
Now, an interesting theory I've seen brought up about the debates and Biden's eyes is the idea that maybe he was wearing contact lenses that were giving him information, like a Google Glass contact lens thing. Because I did notice there was something up with his eyes.
He's had that. He's got that. It's not the first time Biden's had those black eyes.
Yeah,
I actually see it quite a lot. I think maybe he is possessed, man. Like,
maybe.
I don't know, or it's some kind of neuro link that a few of these elites have done.
Yeah.
Like I've seen it a few times with Elon as well. Elon seems to be a bit spaced out.
Well, and with all of these things, generally it all will go through the military-industrial complex and them using it for their purposes before it ever goes mainstream. So you can expect a Biden or someone like that to have it first, and and even with them, they'll probably sell it on to them as being like, something I can do. Sorry, I was just getting notes about a song sent to me. I think, someone like Hillary Clinton, where they're like dying and everything like that, they can sort of just, just sort of keep them alive and be like, this thing will monitor, your with Hillary, her fucking, seizures and all that stuff, and be like, we can prevent you from fucking wigging out in public.
There's a few Hillarys though as well.
Yeah. I've sort of noticed that where she looks very different lately.
Yeah, it's happened a couple of times. They've had a few, and then they had that demon book she was reading. You see that? She's got her own
Yeah.
podcast now. Did you know that?
Yeah.
And then on her desk had a book with these about glass work of these demons having orgies.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me though. We know they like to kind of, vaguely put things like that out there. I mean, I think
Yeah,
it's
I'm really not looking forward to watching America next month. I think it's gonna burn.
I mean, it already is. That's the sad part about it, is it's like, that was sort of the thing when that Supreme Court announcement happened where they were like, we'll burn things down. And it's like, you've already burnt a lot of it. Like, what are you going to do? Set fire to the ashes?
And especially with the lockdowns, just gonna make it harder to get things rerunning again.
Yeah.
No insurance company's gonna be interested.
Well, and that's really the end goal of it, is like just crippling the country and everything.
Especially, I think that's going to be the mask thing. I think that's the setup. Is you have these criminals, and because they're wearing a mask, you don't know who's a criminal, who isn't a criminal anymore. It will just
Yeah.
make everyone very nervous. It will just play everyone off against each other.
Well, and it's already like that though, on a just like everyone's out to infect me mindset. Like I said, the guy fucking walking down the street smoking a cigarette and then spazzing out to put his mask on so he could pass by me.
You just need a Jack the Ripper style thing with the mask, Jack the Ripper. We can't identify this man. And then it becomes like some kind of sick trend. It's almost like it is a lot like that sick. I mean, I didn't watch it, but you did a review on it. That Joker film.
Yeah. Well, and that's even, the whole thing with like Antifa, where, very early on we were saying this is very convenient that now they want to mask everyone, and it just creates this sort of like fog of war environment where it's like you don't know if the person coming with a mask is just an average person or someone
And then you
looking
can't
to...
read their facial expressions either.
Yeah.
So even if they were coming in peace, you wouldn't have much of an idea. So you just shoot, you just think, oh fuck, it's got a mask, shoot him.
Well, and that's again another one of
It
the
is like good
aspects.
times.
That's another one of the aspects I took with the whole job working in mental illness, is again knowing the idea of like we're suppressing expression of human emotion, and isn't that what this whole industry is sort of based on? Like, so I don't know. I am worried on some levels, but I feel like I've also just gotten to a point of like, how much worse can it get? I mean, I do think food shortages are definitely in the cards.
Yeah, do you know why? Because I mean, I know some people around it because I live right on docks. So the problem you've got, is I'm not going to explain this very well, but because of the COVID restrictions, shipping's impossible because of crew. Because they're going to get docked at different countries and not be able to return. And then for the amount of time, you're only allowed to work on a boat for a certain amount of time because you get basically cabin fever and you get accidents and stuff. And you're saying, first of all, that's evident that accidents are happening all the time now, way more common. But he thinks a lot of the ship companies are actually just ditching them on purpose because there's so many legal requirements when a ship does dock and has to be isolated for COVID, that it's basically the legal costs are the same as the ship.
Wow.
So a lot of people are even just dumping the ships now and the crew. And it's just saying like once you get one ship that's refusing to move for whatever reason, I'm not really explaining this very well, but he was saying that can block up a whole port.
Yeah.
And sometimes the army has to come in to get that ship out of the way. What they're going to call it military. And it's just saying like shipping's going to be gone. Like people just don't want to be in this industry now.
Yeah.
They're not interested. There's no money in it. It's dangerous. And they're basically having to use slaves from, in England, most of our crew come from India and places like that, third world countries.
Well, and that's almost sort of like what's going on with people in with their traveling in and out of certain states, because certain states are requiring like quarantines and all this other stuff, and then there crazy fines if you don't and all that. I mean, I don't know how they're enforcing it, but I'm sure they're trying.
Yeah, he was saying with the ships it's impossible because if you get quarantined, you can't get back.
Yeah, and that's the thing
Then the
where it's
crew are
like,
going to demand pay that you don't have, and if you don't pay your crew, they can seize your ship. And he says a lot of crews are just seizing ships now because they're owed so much money
wow.
and they can't get home. So I don't quite understand what's going, but he's saying shipping's going to be not a thing. And get like just literally 2 or 3 months, and it's just not going to be a thing anymore because it's just too risky a business,
Yeah.
and there's too many accidents now. A lot of ships are sinking all the time because the crew are shit, or they're knackered, or they've had enough, or they're understaffed.
Well, and that's like, New York City, we're basically seeing just collapse into itself, where, all the restaurants and small businesses, they're all gone. No one has a reason to go to their office jobs. They're all working remotely.
Yeah,
So
because the way he says it's like shipping, like even though a ship costs a lot of money, it looks kind of glamorous on paper. He says there's not much margins in it.
yeah.
So once you get a ship seized, and you've got 4 ships, it's pretty much over for you.
Well, and that's the thing too now, where it's like, you used to have these office buildings in New York City where they would just be filled with people in cubicles, and now they're all working remotely. So now what is the property owner do when they have a fucking 40-story building of offices that no one needs because everyone's remote, and now you have
Yeah, he
this.
says there's been a lot of suicides as well, that when people do get quarantined, or they're having to work just so far away from home, because you're only supposed to be on a ship for so amount of time, and they're saying they're extending it for so long. A lot of people just losing it and just killing themselves on the ship, and the ship just fucking sinks. I shouldn't laugh, but it's just happening like all the time.
Yeah, I don't
And he says
know.
if a ship gets delayed, like if it's got food on that ship, if it does get delayed by a day, a lot of that produce can now, by the time it gets to the shop, can actually not be good food anymore.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things people realized here too with a lot of the grocery store stuff, is that everything is done on this very sort of systematic clockwork kind of thing, where it's like the cycling out of what's fresh, what isn't, and everything like that. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of our regulations don't help, where I mean, we have to put expiration dates on things that basically don't expire just so they can remove it and put in new product to keep the businesses churning things out. But it's done in a very clockworky sort of manner, where if there's a breakdown in the process at some point, everything else sort of goes to shit, like how you're describing with the shipping, or even just a 1 day delay can create a huge chain reaction.
Yeah, it's not good news anywhere really. And England, it looks like they're just locking down the poor parts. Like I say, you can't really go anywhere unless you've got a mask on or you do a track and trace. Everyone's pretty much sketching out and freaking out. And they want people to go along with it. So going, if you don't wear your mask, we're going to get locked down again. So it's kind of like you see the script where everyone knows the science isn't there. Everyone knows that it's a fast, but it's because if we just follow the rules, we'll get some goodies at the end of it.
Well,
And it's like, you guys are insane if you
but
think like this. The rules, what are you on about?
that's what I was saying about Biden's sale pitch, though. It's this counterintuitive thing of him basically coming in and saying, like, despite whatever, let me just end the economy, and I promise you there'll be goodies by the end of it. Everything will be better at the end of it. Let me just destroy it all. And it's like it's this weird sort of pitch where you're like, how are you saying we fix the economy by killing it? Like, but that's the sort of mindset they've sold everyone on of, well, if we
Because that's going to be it. I mean, it probably does actually. Biden's probably actually right because if we can't afford the Great Reset, whoever goes bust first, I guess, wins. It's a race to the. It is literally a race
race
to
to
the
the
bottom.
bottom, yeah.
Maybe Trump's wrong. He just don't get it.
I see, but
So they've locked him in a crazy room.
I mean, the thing is, though, is it's like, is it unavoidable because of COVID, though? Or was it bound to happen either way? I mean, part of me thinks it was bound to happen either way with the devaluation of the dollar, but I also would like to think that there is a way to sort of reset and fix things without this whole depopulation
Yeah, it's called a war.
and thrown into it.
Yeah.
Well, but here's the problem is, the people that are really pushing for this, they're the ones with their MO. It's always like maximum chaos and destruction entailed into their plans because they profit off of it all the time. They're the ones where when New York City collapses, they're going to come in and buy everything up and then rebuild it all and everything else. Like,
They're not going to rebuild it this time, I don't think.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think they
Because
will anytime
if you
soon.
put this into Google, this freaked me out a lot. Did you see the Deagle report?
No.
Go on Deagle, just type in Deagle, Deagle, I think it is. It's like a military page where they do all the analytics around the world. So they take each country one by one, and it'll go through like how big will the military be, what will their GDP be, how much oil will they have, and it's got stuff like what will their population be. If you click on America, it looks like you're all dead in 2025, according to your population numbers. I think it's like a drop of something like, it was either 20 million or I think it was 20 million people are going to be missing. And the same with the UK and Sweden. If you look at any third world countries, they're all going to suffer millions and millions.
Yeah.
Many people that are living there. It doesn't have any to why these numbers are what they are. It just tells you what the numbers are. Can you see it on there?
Yeah.
Don't know if it was Deagle.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now.
Yeah, look at America's numbers. What's the population decrease by 2025? It's something ridiculous.
It says 99.
Million.
Yeah.
Shit, where are you all going on holiday?
I don't know.
Yeah. And I can't believe no one's asked the media to explain those numbers. Why?
And it's weird because when
Because
you go
Deagle's like a full-on, it's not like a bullshit webpage.
when you go to Mexico, it says previously 124 million, down 0%, and then to America it says
Yeah.
previously 326 million, down
Yeah, and apparently
minus
there's lots of
70%.
Chinese troops in Mexico at the moment. A lot of Chinese troops in Mexico.
Well, see, and that's the one aspect of everything that no one's really talking about is, hey, you,
What are you doing?
I'm on the computer. Is we're basically at war with China.
Hi.
Hi.
Yo,
Hi.
I'm talking to a friend.
China.
I've been beating him up.
You're gonna beat him up?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, my niece busted in real quick.
I don't mind.
But yeah, the whole thing with China is, I think there's definitely going to end up being a war
Oh,
with
wait,
them
stop.
sooner than later.
What are you doing? Right, sir?
Go downstairs.
You're crazy.
I know I'm crazy.
I'm sorry too. I'm crazy. Oh my gosh.
Get out of here, silly. I'll be down in a bit. See you later. She's so cute.
When you would look at reports, like imagine being a youngster now in the UK. What are your hopes and dreams right now if you're a 20-year-old?
Yeah. You know, that's
What are they? What's your dream job gonna be? You want to be in a rock band and play? You can't even do that. Like the ultimate dream.
yeah.
Are you gonna be in a theater? Are you gonna be on the stage? Nah. You're even gonna be in an office? Probably not. Are you gonna open your own business? Shouldn't laugh. Nope. You gonna have your own restaurant, your own bar? Probably not.
Yeah, it's so
Just
true.
imagine
Like
that. The
what
youngsters are gonna have no hope at all.
yeah. Where it's like what sort of world is gonna be on the other end for them to come out of this? I don't even know. I don't even know what
What about
sort
the
of
ones that have just come out of uni and just got all that debt? Yeah, oh, great. This is great.
You know what I think is funny? I think about it with like like I used to when the people in my age range were all in high school and college and all this, I was always viewed as sort of like this rebellious, hardcore punk rock, tear down the system and all this stuff. And I would always date these girls that would go into education. And now I'm looking at it where I'm like, all these girls now have inadvertently signed on to Orange Man bad, let's burn all the books, purge history, burn it all down, tear it down, and I'm the one being like, tradition isn't that bad, actually. Like, it's this weird inversion of everything that happened where it's like, now you have these fucking, pretend prim and proper school teachers that think they're the fucking rebels while they're the system in the same moment. And meanwhile, it's like,
Yeah, I'd say the same about you, though. You're going nuts. I'd say the same about you because they did that with the whole Obama Trump thing. Everyone that's anti-government is now pro-government, and all the people that are pro-Obama are now anti-government. They just switched it around, man, like a script.
I mean, I see, but we've had this talk before where I think, saying anti-government or pro-government, I think that's bad
You know what I
framing.
mean? It's generalized. Forget
Yeah.
the terminology, but they still did it.
Because, I mean, even with myself, and I forget who else I was hearing talk about this, where it's like, I think, like, libertarianism is just as utopian as communism. I mean, and it's why one is the far left and one is the far right. And I think it's, again, something you sort of grow out of, where you're like, okay, yeah, I do think, business definitely solves problems better than the government, but I do also agree that there is a role for the government, and it just needs to be very constrained and held back and not able to grow and only fulfill certain tasks. I mean, I think I still have the same sort of outlook towards government where it's like there's certain agencies I would like to be abolished. Like, I'm very anti, bring me an agency and I'll tell you if I'm for or against that agency, but I'm definitely not against the government in totality.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, just look from Bill Gates' point of view. Is it such a bad idea, like wiping out 90% of people?
Well, and
I mean, I get it. People are this stupid in 2020. Like, I'm kind of going down that road. I don't like to go down that road, but it's like, what? Maybe he's right. What hope do these people actually freaking have? I get it's mind control. I get they were
I see. I was
programmed.
going to say, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a problem reaction solution thing where it's like you're looking at it and contemplating the solution that you've been led to through all of this, where it's like they've made people into this essentially. And I mean, yes, there
That's
are.
what the dehumanizing is with the mask. You saw it with the police. They had to dehumanize the police and make them so stupid. They did it in different ways in the UK to what they did
Yeah.
in America, but it's the same thing. So when it comes to defunding the police, it's very hard to defend the police. And it always has been. It's not because of racism. It's because they've been just discriminate. Like, they just do ridiculous shit like giving out tickets and all this.
Yeah.
It's been such a bad idea that no one's got respect for a cop anymore.
Yeah, because they're just seen as some ball buster rather than a crime fighter.
Yeah, so when it comes to defund it, it's not going to be that many people that actually go, yeah, I've had a good experience with the cops. It's worth
Yeah.
saving.
But I think that general dynamic has been applied to the populace at large. And I mean, you're sort of saying that even with the mask thing too, where it's like, we've had people just dehumanized and demoralized to the point where it's like, well, I mean, whether you can imply that to pro-life and abortion arguments, that there's been a devaluing and a dehumanizing.
Yeah, we deserve it. I mean, look at what we do. Look at what we've done. It's not. I know a lot of it's government, but a lot of what we put up with, can you blame them for wiping us out?
Well, and I think that's their sort of, it's again that vampiric mindset of, well, we opened the door, they walked through it, and now that they're
you've got to consent to it
through the other side. What's the point of even having this? Look at how bad it can be corrupted. I mean, I don't know, the Christian in me likes to always believe that no one is beyond redemption.
Yeah, I'm not saying that,
but no, I can see, just from a pragmatic point, like you're saying, like,
they're not going to get redemption because there's no spark to redeem, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's kind of like beyond that.
Yeah, well, and even just the environment and the conditioning for it, where, again, you should check out that interview I was talking about with the North Korean defector, because you can sort of see with all this how we are sliding into that sort of world where they're really trying to create. I mean, this girl was even saying how she didn't even know words existed to express stress, depression, and all of these other things. Like, there were like words for emotions that were just not taught to people. Like, I mean, it's the ultimate form of mind control. And I really feel like we are sort of shaping a world where, not in that regard, but in a regard towards the economy, where they're going to try to convince people that certain jobs like live music and all of that just can't be done because it's too dangerous. And to kids growing up nowadays, it will be like, if you've never seen a concert, you get what I'm saying like in a vague sense.
Yeah, a lot of our history could just get wiped because it's all online.
Yeah.
Just wipe it. And I do wonder, like, you could get a conspiracy. Maybe that's happened a lot of times. Like, this isn't the first time it's happened. There does seem to be a mass culling every 80 years or so.
Well, part of the argument
in the history books, it's like we could go on all day about World War II and go, well, the Archduke was assassinated on this date, on this place, and actually it's like, no.
Well,
Do you know what I mean? You could study World War II all you want. You're never going to make any sense of it. It was a mass culling.
I mean, that ties into a lot of the arguments I've made around the identity politics stuff, where the whole point about a lot of your Black Americans being a large portion Native American. That part of their history has been erased, and towards the white people, you've had the establishment of this white identity that
anyone that's born in America is Native American, guys.
Yeah, right. And that's how it should be. But, you've had this sort of white American identity constructed where, I mean, I never viewed myself as white. When I would ask my parents, what are we? They would say, well, we're Dutch, English, German, little bit of Native American, and, I don't know, Welsh or something else. Like, it would always be...
Race never entered my head until I was 20.
Yeah.
Like, I was really late.
But the thing is now people are choosing to identify it, and with that comes a set of sort of mythos, and so I mean there is this sort of erasing and repackaging and rewriting history that goes on over and over and over. I think it's just because it isn't handed to everyone all at once of, here it is, like that people don't realize it's happening. Like, you see that with the 1619 Project, them trying to be like, well, America was actually founded when the first slave ships arrived and all this other stuff. And it's like that sort of ricocheting information thing where it's like, okay, if you have...
What, you mean the slaves full of Irish people?
Well, that's yeah, part of it, but they're not focused on that. They're just focused on. I mean, you know, to one, I saw a thing even where a person was saying, and here's it. You bring up a great example. The idea that there is a vast difference between slavery and indentured servitude. And there really wasn't. There really wasn't much of a difference between what happened to the Irish being brought over here and the blacks, but they put two different labels on them, and then it's viewed as two different separate things. So that's, again, where history gets sort of overwritten. Not even rewritten,
And there
but
are more black
overwritten.
slave owners, I guess, in America than white. Not by much, but enough.
But you have those situations go on over and over and over. But I think, you know, now, like you're saying with the internet, you can sort of overwrite even recent history. Like, I get so confused when, like, I'm talking to people and they don't even have a perception of, like, the 90s because they were little kids
Right.
during it. You know, and there's this whole black people did this, white people did that. Why does everyone think this is so funny?
People can't
I'm
even
like,
remember stuff a few months ago, Jamie.
yeah.
They can't remember what we were witnessing coming out of China.
Yeah.
Remember where we were at, like, late February, what we were witnessing. Like, I was shitting my pants.
Because they were showing videos of people just dropping.
And people have forgotten this, and we're still on this COVID thing. And there's no, like, the conversations, I don't even want the conversations to go back there. But the only conversation that should be important, if it is true, is where the fuck did this thing come from?
Yeah.
And if it is this lab, are we not going to stop these labs then? We're still going to muck about of this shit then, are we?
Well, that's the really scary part about things, and that now to some extent, I think some of that is again in the sort of military intelligence.
If it was
black
real, that
ops
would be
area.
the UNO thing. It's like, who let this thing out? Who? Why? What? You know the questions we need
Yeah.
answering, and people should hang for it.
Yeah.
And they should be pretty loose on who they hang. To be honest with you.
Trust me, I've joked around for a while that if I was president, I would only need a week to do everything I need to do to straighten things out, because it would look like North Korea for a week. You'd have public executions.
Yeah, I don't understand what negotiating you're doing with someone that runs a biolab.
Yeah.
I don't want to go there, but can you name one good thing that comes out of this?
Well, and even
We all know what we're doing with a biolab.
even George Soros at this rate, like, part of me just really wonders where it's like, okay, he's been name dropped enough for being at the
Yeah,
top
he's literally
of,
just a cartoon character.
yeah, and it's like, it's
Not believable.
well, and it's almost like they make him out like, do you remember Inspector Gadget, where the bad guy was
Yeah,
always just
yeah.
seen as like that
It's
hand,
stupid.
and you never really saw it, but it's just that hand that picks up the phone or whatever. Like, I mean, part of me just feels like there's got to be something that you can lock this guy up for, charge him for treason,
Just shut his
subversion.
account down.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if they can do it to Laura Loomer, I don't know why they couldn't just freeze all of his American assets and accounts. Like, and that's the part that bothers me and I get really demoralized about, where I'm like, we know who the people are that are running these operations. Like, why are they still, you know, and I guess it ties into, you know, how you would sort of press on the, like, why isn't Hillary arrested? Like, and it'd be one thing if they pulled her aside and were like, listen, you're either going to jail or you go off to a fucking cottage somewhere never to be seen or heard from again. But it's obviously not, because she's still very involved. Like, so I don't know. I've always joked that I would clean house and it would just be a week of firing squads. It would be like Red October. Like, the streets would just run with blood, and then everything would be sorted out by the end of it.
That's what I was hoping the lockdown was for the first 2 weeks. I was like, there's a 10% chance that they cut the electric and a lot of people are just gone.
Yeah. Wishful thinking.
Unfortunately, that didn't happen.
Yeah. Well, that's what you had a lot of the QAnon crowd thinking it was. Oh, they're locking things down to come and get everyone and this and that. And meanwhile, everyone they thought they were coming and getting just got richer.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Anyway,
I
I
mean,
gotta get
I mean,
going.
got Halloween 2020 is going to be insane.
Yeah, definitely is. I
I'm
think.
going to turn 40 on Friday. Do you want to do a live stream then and have a beer?
Yeah,
'Cause I
sure,
can't go out anywhere, can I?
sure.
Maybe do it in the evening. Actually have a couple of beers. I'm going to be 40, man.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
You're going to keep me entertained, cheer me up.
I'll try.
I'll be pretty depressed about it, I reckon.
Maybe I'll try to find a bunch of video clips to pull or something, and we'll.
We could try a live jam.
Could. I know
I
there's
reckon
I
it'll
know
work.
there's ways now with like screen sharing and stuff with that on here.
I reckon we
so-
can do it just on Facebook, man.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think Facebook has like screen sharing and all sorts of Zoom-like features now added. They had to up their game during the lockdown. But yeah, we can definitely get together on Friday.
Yeah, I'm going to need it, or I'm just going to cry alone.
I'll make sure when I set up my work schedule for the week that I'm off. So, all right. Well, let me get going. I got some running around I have to do.
Right.
So, all right. I'll talk to you then.
Good luck, man.
All right.
See ya.
Later.